Guys, you got to save your energy for your family. You got to save your energy for your wife and children. Now, here's what I mean by that. When I say save energy, I'm coming to you as a 40-year-old man when I say this. I don't have the same energy, even the same metabolic rate, things like that I had when I was maybe in my late teens or early 20s. That's just nature. That's just how it is. And furthermore, I don't have the time expenditure that I used to have at a younger age. Obviously, I've got more responsibilities. You slow down physically over time. Now, you can do things to circumvent that to a certain extent, but at the end of the day, your energy does have a limit. You need recharge, you need replenished. That's why honoring the Sabbath is so important because we need a time to rest and replenish. But beyond that, I'm talking about saving your energy for those that are really important. And of course, your family, your wife, and your kids, they should be of the utmost importance. There's energy vampires out here. What I mean by that is there are people who will, they're usually unstable, unsavory. I'm sure some of you guys know what I'm talking about. There's energy leeches out there. People that when they see or they sense that you're on a good vibe or going in a good direction, they try to extract that from you. So they'll dump all their problems on you, all their drama on you. They'll try to make it sound like woe is me. And here's something that I run into probably more times than I care to count in my life. The person that subtly tries to make you feel bad for doing right. So you got an education and a good job and a good family and you got a decent income and they'll try to bring a woe is me perspective. Man, you have it better off than me, or man, I wish I had some of the stuff that you have, but almost in a condescending way. If you've experienced it, you know what I'm talking about. But the point I'm trying to make is there are energy vampires out there, and you can't just give them your all. I have a general way of handling these things, which I'll get to more towards the end of the video. But just realize that there are energy vampires out here. The other thing is just because you have a lot of energy, you have a lot of enthusiasm, passion, vigor, whatever you want to call it, that doesn't mean that you have to be a recruiter. I've realized this in my life that and people have come up and told me in my daily life, at work, especially in my church, at different ministries, they've been like, hey, you should be part of this committee. You should be part of this ministry or this group. And, because really need somebody like you to go out there and get people and bring them in and draw them in. And I get what you're saying. I might have an energy or a demeanor about me that can draw people in, but it's different when it becomes a recruiting task because a big part of recruiting, at least in my view, is that you have to go and draw out enthusiasm from people that aren't initially enthused on their own volition. I've always been more of the operation and mindset that you have to show me a baseline level of enthusiasm. You bring them to me, and I'll keep them engaged. I feel like I've always been good at that, but going out and recruiting people, it's just not something that I like to do. Now, I can do it if I absolutely have to, if it's an absolute necessity, but that's where you experience the burnout. Going back to what I said a little bit earlier about energy vampires, that happens when you have to put forth so much effort in order to get a person to have any sort of peak interest. And then you have to do the things to maintain or retain that energy. And very few people, I would assume, have the energy to do both simultaneously. Some people are good recruiters, but they're not good about thinking of the long term. Some people aren't great at that initial drawing in, but they're great at keeping people engaged and on board. But yeah, I'm more of the keeping people engaged on the board. I'm not a recruiter. I should say I don't like to be a recruiter. People think that about you when you do have a good energy about you because they're not used to seeing that in their daily lives. People aren't used to seeing somebody that has enthusiasm or gives a crap about the things in their life, even the quote unquote regular or mundane things. Like, I'm enthusiastic and engaging about my family, about my wife and kids, about the Word of God. Like, I'm enthusiastic about that. But I look at that as more of a standard. That's how it should be, rather than this shouldn't be a diamond in the rough situation. But when that's not common, and that's definitely the case in our culture, it's not common to see somebody who loves the Lord outwardly and loves their family outwardly. So when you see somebody like that, you just want to draw them in. It's like, hey, you should get other people to do that. You have it all figured out. That's not how I am, guys. So I'm not a recruiter. Going into the next point, unstable people are going to be drawn to stable people, for better or for worse. We have a lot of that again in our culture, to where people that are unstable, they almost make an identity of their traumas and their instability in life. They feed off of it, and they use that as an excuse to just jump into whatever part of society that they can, and oftentimes do absurd things for their attention, for acceptance, because people just want to fit in somewhere. You know, that's why I would say, let me use this as an example. I worked many years, a good amount of years of my life, in mental health and social services, just as a profession, as a vocation. And I usually get a lot of, how do I put this? People being drawn in, but by what I represent. What I mean, so a lot of people that are clinically unbalanced or going through things with addiction, drug and alcohol, things like that, people come up and they want my attention, and they tell me all these secrets. I've had people that I've worked with from a clientele perspective tell me or indulge in things that, they'll admit to me. I don't talk to my therapist about this. I don't talk to my psychiatrist about this. I don't talk to close knit members of my family about this, but I'll talk to you, Daniel, about this. And there could be different reasons behind that. Part of it could be because, well, like, I'm paid to do this, and part of my job is to give people second, third, fourth, however many chances. So they could be feeding off of that. Another part of it is, and I realize this, that it could be they just look at me and they think that, like, I'm a sucker or something. And I know that's part of it as well. But I have reason to believe a lot of it is because I walk into a room, or I walk into an area, and not saying this to toot my own horn, I'm just speaking truth here, that I'm probably the most functional and stable adult that they'll cross paths with this week, or probably that they've ever seen before. They'll look at, um, I'll just say elephant in the room. They look at a black man and they think that, like what? And trust me, like, deep down subconsciously, this has to happen. They'll look and they'll think, like, what? Like, he's not all about uh, pulling his pants down and talking a bunch of slang and profanity. Because let's be honest, a lot of people have the stereotypical viewpoint based on what they hear in a song or what they see on TV of what I should be walking in the door. And I just, without saying it out front, but just in my demeanor, no, I don't get down like that. I'm a simple, straightforward guy that's here to do my job to the best of my ability. And people quickly realize that. Sometimes it makes people feel, I don't know, embarrassed or ashamed about it when they see it. But they're drawn to that stability because that stereotypical image they've drawn on is that, you know, someone of my age, of my complexion, I'm going to be running around with different baby moms and doing all kinds of debauchery. And that's just not something that I do. And people sense that from pretty much from the get-go without me having to wear a big billboard or advertisement. They can pretty much sense that from me. And again, I'm not saying this to toot my own horn. I'm saying it in a sense that people that are unstable or unsure about themselves or even unsure about their identity, they're drawn to that because they think of it as a sort of comfort zone. And that's what me and men similar to me can represent. But this is where you have to be very careful. This is where you got to do things to make sure you don't get burnt out, especially if it's your job, if it's your vocation. You got to be very careful about not letting yourself get burnt out. You have to, once you punch out for the day, leave work at work and separate it from home. You really should be saving your best energy again for your family, for your wife and children. They should get the best out of you. And if that means that you have to pick your spots a little bit, if you have to set boundaries, if you have to say no to some things, if you have to not be a part of the crowd, part of the status quo, then so be it. In conclusion, I'm just saying here, you gotta save your energy. You gotta save your energy for people that obviously that you care the most about in a deep sense, but also you have to save your energy for people that are actually willing to meet you halfway. Just going back to what I said a little earlier about not being a recruiter, I'm not going to sit there and throw a bunch of mud against the wall to see what sticks. I don't want to waste my energy on that. Show me a baseline level of enthusiasm. In other words, I'm not going to convince you to care. You have to give me some modicum of caring, and then from there, I can ask, and then we can move forward, and maybe I can divulge you some tips, some suggestions, some advice, or maybe you can just go around with me for a day and see how I live and what I do, and take some notes and draw some things from that. I'm not saying this as somebody like I've got every single thing in life figured out, but I feel like I've got a pretty good and stable situation for myself, and I would love to talk to just about anybody. Just put me in a room with them for an hour, or let's just spend some personal time together, and I'd be glad to just dispense some wisdom on more than just a short YouTube video. But if you're the type of person that people need to convince you to care, like you don't have a baseline level of enthusiasm, or you're just waiting for somebody to find you and discover you, or you're the type of person that sees somebody thriving or having stability, and instead of asking, like, how do I get that? Or maybe I should talk to that person to figure something out. And you just go into a shell of bitterness or life has done me dirty and let me be mad at the man because everything's somebody else's fault. If you're going to be that kind of person, I'm not going to have anything to do with you. And no stable, sensible person will either. But if you're a hopefully stable and sensible, family-oriented person, like me, or at least like I try to be, just remember, guys, save your energy for your family, save your energy for the people that matters, and the people that are fake enthusiastic, or the people that want you to spoon feed them. Okay, sit back and wait, and whenever you care, I'm sure they'll come a knocking, and even if they do, just protect your boundaries and only give your energy, only give your advice and suggestions if they're actually willing to listen. All right? You guys have a great day. God bless. Peace.